In a small village far away, two girls grew up together. Their names were Nneka and Amarachi. They were best friends from childhood. They walked to school together, played together, even ate together. Everyone in the village knew them because they were always together like shadow and body. But the problem was this: both of them were very proud and rude. Before we begin further, please make sure you subscribe and stay with us, because this story will chill your bones. They never respected people, and they never cared about anyone's feelings. When elders talked to them, they would laugh. When small children greeted them, they would ignore them. Sometimes they even flogged little children who forgot to greet them. The poor children would cry and run home, and their parents would rush angrily to Nneka and Amarachi's parents. Soon, quarrels started in the village because of the two girls. But Nneka and Amarachi never stopped. They would boast, "Nobody can do us anything." Even the village boys feared them. Whenever boys tried to come close, the girls would beat them up. They were strong and stubborn. At the stream, they would block the road and chase boys away. If anybody insulted them, they would fight back with stones and sticks. The boys whispered among themselves, "Better stay away from those two wild girls." Not only that, they could even enter people's farms without fear. They would pluck people's corn, cassava, or fruits, and walk away laughing. If the owner complained, they would say, "No level. You can't do us anything." The villagers grew tired of reporting them. Their parents were ashamed, but the girls never cared. "We are the queens of this village," Nneka would boast, and Amarachi would clap and laugh. One hot afternoon, the two friends walked through the dusty road of the village. They were singing loudly, disturbing everybody's peace. Some people shook their heads, saying, "One day, these girls will meet trouble." As they walked, they saw an old woman sitting by the roadside, holding a walking stick. The old woman greeted them gently, but instead of replying, Nneka and Amarachi burst into loud laughter, mocking her. None of them knew that this old woman was no ordinary person. The old woman looked at Nneka and Amarachi with sad eyes. She shook her head slowly and said, "My children, why are your hearts so hard? Is it too big to greet your mother's age mate?" The girls only laughed louder. Nneka folded her hands across her chest and hissed, "Old woman, go away before we flog you like we flogged those children that refused to greet us." Amarachi laughed and added, "Yes, we don't bow to poor people like you." The villagers around gasped in shock. The old woman's eyes suddenly changed. They shone like fire. Her wrinkled face grew stern, and her voice became strong. She pointed her shaky finger at Nneka and said, "Because of your pride, because you mock the old, from today, you will eat grass like a goat. Food will never stay in your stomach again, only grass will." Her words echoed in the air like thunder. At first, Nneka and Amarachi laughed, thinking it was a joke. But suddenly, Nneka dropped her bag, fell on her knees, and crawled on the ground. Before anyone could stop her, she bent down and started eating grass by the roadside. The crowd screamed in fear. "Chinik! Nneka has turned to an animal," one woman shouted. Amarachi rushed to her friend, trying to pull her up, but Nneka pushed her away and chewed faster like a hungry goat. Amarachi knelt down crying, "Mama, please, forgive her. Please, don't let my friend suffer like this." The old woman shook her head slowly. "My child, she brought this upon herself. Let her learn that pride goes before destruction." But Amarachi continued to beg, holding the woman's leg. The old woman freed herself and began to walk away. Amarachi ran after her, still begging, but the woman vanished into thin air. By now, Nneka's mouth was full of green leaves. Villagers gathered, some frightened, some whispering. A man tried to give her water, but she spat it out. Another woman brought hot food, but as soon as Nneka tasted it, she vomited and screamed, "Grass! Give me grass!" People trembled, for they had never seen such a thing in their lives. Amarachi cried bitterly, hugging her friend who was crawling in the dirt like a wild animal. Everyone knew the curse was real. From that day, life changed for Nneka. She could no longer eat food like a normal person. Whenever her parents or Amarachi tried to feed her rice, yam, or soup, she would vomit everything. Her body rejected it completely. But whenever she saw grass, her eyes widened and her mouth watered. She would run to the roadside, kneel down, and start tearing the grass with her teeth like a goat. Villagers would gather, covering their mouths in shock. Amarachi always tried to cover her, but the shame was too heavy. As days passed, the news spread around the village. Everybody knew that Nneka had become a grass eater. Some felt pity for her, but many mocked her. Whenever she sneaked out to the road or the village square, children would follow her, clapping their hands and singing, "Grass chopper. Grass eater. Nneka the goat." They laughed as they watched her chew leaves. Sometimes they even threw grass in front of her, and to the shame of her family, Nneka would fall on it and start eating. Amarachi's heart broke every time. She chased the children away, shouting at them, "Leave her alone." But the children only laughed harder. Even the boys who once feared the two friends now mocked Nneka openly. "So this is the mighty Nneka that used to beat us? Look at her now, chewing grass like an animal." The same boys she once slapped at the stream now pointed fingers at her. Pride had turned into disgrace. Her parents were confused and helpless. They took her to the native doctor, but the man shook his head after making sacrifices. "This is not an ordinary sickness. A great power is behind it." They carried her to the church, and the pastor prayed and prayed. But Nneka vomited holy water and shouted, "Give me grass." The parents cried bitterly, not knowing what else to do. Amarachi stayed by her side, still begging anyone they met to help, but no solution came. At night, Nneka could no longer sleep in her room. She would sneak out to the backyard, crawl into the bush, and chew grass until her stomach was full. Sometimes the neighbors woke up to the sound of her teeth grinding leaves in the darkness. Mothers would quickly drag their children inside, whispering, "The curse has eaten her soul." By now, everybody knew, the proud girl who once mocked others had become the shame of the village. Weeks passed, and Nneka's life grew more miserable. Her skin started to change. Once smooth and bright, it now looked rough, with scratches from crawling on the ground. Her stomach became swollen, and her lips were always green from chewing grass. Flies gathered around her mouth whenever she ate, and the villagers could hardly look at her without shivering. Amarachi could not believe that her proud and beautiful friend had become like this. The shame was not only hers anymore, it spread to her whole family. Her mother cried day and night, while her father could not walk freely in the village. Whenever people saw him, they whispered, "That is Nneka's father, the father of the grass eater." Some women in the market mocked openly, if only they trained their daughter well, she would not be crawling like a goat today. The family became an object of gossip and laughter. But what broke hearts the most was that Nneka began to lose her strength. She grew thinner and thinner, her bones sticking out. Sometimes, after eating grass, she vomited blood. Her body shook with fever, yet when food was placed before her, she screamed and threw it away. She only wanted grass. Amarachi stayed close, crying, begging her, "Please, Nneka, try and eat this yam. Please, for me." But Nneka pushed her hand away and crawled back to the bush. The villagers became restless. Some said she was cursed by the gods, others whispered she was paying for all the wicked things she and Amarachi had done. "She flogged our children," one man reminded. "She beat our boys," another added. "She stole from our farms." Everybody agreed the curse was heavy and just. But still, seeing her crawl in sickness made some people pity her. They wished to help, but they were powerless. One night, as the moon shone brightly, Nneka sneaked out again. Amarachi followed her quietly, hoping to stop her. She found Nneka kneeling in the middle of the village square, her face buried in the grass. Children woke up from sleep and gathered, clapping and chanting, "Grass eater! Grass eater!" Amarachi chased them away, but by the time she turned back, she saw Nneka collapse on the ground, shaking violently. Amarachi screamed for help, her voice echoing through the silent night. The night Nneka collapsed in the village square, the whole place was in confusion. Her body shook as if unseen hands were pulling her apart. Amarachi knelt beside her, crying and screaming, "Somebody help us." Villagers gathered, but nobody touched her. Fear gripped them. Some shouted, "Don't near her. She is cursed." Others said, "Carry her to her parents." At last, her father rushed forward, lifted her weak body, and carried her home. The whole village whispered through the night, wondering if she would survive till morning. By dawn, Amarachi made up her mind, she would find the old woman and beg her until her knees bled. She tied her wrapper, left home without eating, and began asking people, "Did you see the old woman that cursed my friend? Where does she live? Which family is she from?" But nobody had an answer. Some villagers said they had never seen her before. Others whispered she was not a human being, but a spirit in the form of an old woman. Amarachi refused to give up. She went from house to house, knocking on doors, disturbing people, crying. She walked to the edge of the forest, calling, "Mama, please, forgive my friend. Show yourself." But all she heard was the echo of her own voice. The trees swayed, the birds flew, but the old woman was nowhere. Amarachi wept until her eyes were swollen. Still, she swore she would not rest until she found help. Meanwhile, Nneka's condition grew worse. She could no longer stand. Her knees were bruised from crawling. Whenever she sneaked out, children still mocked her, "Grass eater! Goat girl!" But now their laughter was mixed with fear, because Nneka's eyes had turned red and wild. At times, she chewed grass and laughed loudly to herself. At other times, she wept like a baby. Her parents became afraid that soon she would die. One evening, Amarachi sat outside, tired and hopeless after another long search. Suddenly, she saw a shadow at the end of the dusty road. Her heart jumped. Could it be her? She whispered. The figure walked slowly, leaning on a stick. Amarachi's body trembled. She ran forward, calling, "Mama! Mama, please wait." But when she reached the spot, the figure disappeared like smoke. Only dust rose in the air. Amarachi fell to the ground, crying bitterly. The days dragged on, and Nneka's life became a shadow of what it once was. She no longer looked human. Her hair was rough and dirty, her clothes torn from crawling in the bush. When she laughed, it sounded like the cry of a wild animal. When she wept, it shook the hearts of those who heard her. But no matter how sick she grew, her mouth always longed for grass. The villagers started avoiding her. Nobody wanted to walk on the same path she used. Amarachi, who once followed her everywhere, grew restless. Fear began to eat her heart. At night she could not sleep, because she kept dreaming of the old woman's fire eyes. "What if she curses me next?" she whispered to herself. "What if my friendship with Nneka brings me trouble?" The same friend she once defended now filled her with fear. Amarachi began to spend less time around her, making excuses, pretending to be busy. One afternoon, Amarachi sat in her mother's hut, shaking her head. "Mama, I can't take it anymore. People are starting to say I will end up like Nneka. They call us the proud friends, the cursed ones. I don't want to die like her." Her mother sighed and said, "My daughter, you must think of your own life. Nneka's curse may swallow you if you stay too close." Those words entered Amarachi's heart like a knife. That night, she packed her things quietly. At dawn, she left the village with her family, without saying goodbye to Nneka. The once faithful friend who swore never to leave had abandoned her in shame and sickness. When Nneka woke up and asked, "Where is Amarachi?" No one answered. Her father sighed deeply, her mother wept, and the villagers only shook their heads. Word spread quickly, "Amarachi has run away." Nneka's heart broke. She crawled into the middle of the village square and wailed, "Amarachi, my only friend. You too have left me." Her cry echoed like thunder, but Amarachi was gone. Children peeped from the corners, whispering, "The grass eater is alone now." Even the boys laughed, saying, "Her proud friend has escaped." From that moment, Nneka was not just cursed, she was abandoned, mocked, and left to carry her suffering alone. Days turned into weeks, and Nneka's suffering grew beyond imagination. She no longer behaved like a normal human being. Sometimes she crawled on all fours, growling like a wild beast. Her nails grew long and dirty, her eyes red and shiny, her voice cracked and strange. At night, people heard her crawling around the village, plucking grass from the ground and chewing loudly in the dark. Mothers would quickly drag their children inside, whispering, "Close the door, the cursed girl is outside." Her body was wasted. Her ribs showed, her lips were always stained green, and her once beautiful face looked hollow and scary. Some villagers swore they saw her chasing goats and competing with them for grass. Others claimed she hissed like a snake when they tried to stop her. Soon, rumors spread that Nneka was turning into a half-human, half-animal creature. Fear covered the village like a dark cloud. Even her own family became frightened of her. Her mother could hardly go near her anymore. Sometimes when she tried to hold her, Nneka would bite and scratch like a wild cat. Her father sat in silence most days, his head in his hands, wondering how his once proud daughter had become the shame of their household. Nobody brought food to their home anymore. Neighbors avoided their compound, fearing the curse might leap upon them. But what made the fear worse was the sound. In the middle of the night, Nneka's cries echoed through the air. It was not the cry of a normal girl, it was a haunting, animal-like scream that made people wake up sweating in fear. Children hid under their mothers' wrappers, trembling. Men sat outside with sticks and lanterns, whispering, "If she turns into a full beast, we must be ready." The whole village lived in tension. Still, in the midst of her madness, Nneka never stopped calling one name, Amarachi. Sometimes she crawled to the edge of the village road, looking into the distance, shouting, "Amarachi, come back. Don't leave me like this." But only the night wind answered. Her friend had gone, and the old woman was nowhere to be found. Nneka was trapped between life and death, cursed to suffer alone, while the whole village watched in fear of what she might become next. By now, the whole village lived in fear. Nneka's cries at night, her crawling in the bushes, her red eyes and sharp nails, it was more than people could endure. Mothers warned their children, never go near her. Farmers complained that she was destroying their farms, chewing down the tender grass around their crops. Men whispered in groups, saying, "If this continues, one day she may harm somebody." The curse had turned into a burden for everyone. One evening, the village elders gathered under the big tree in the square. Their faces were stern. The oldest among them spoke, "This thing is no longer ordinary. If we allow her to remain here, the gods may punish us all." Another elder shook his head and said, "She disrespected the old woman. She mocked the elders. She brought this curse with her own hands. Now she is turning into a beast before our eyes. We must decide quickly." As they spoke, angry villagers joined the meeting. Some shouted, "Drive her away. We don't want her here anymore." Others cried, "But she is still human, the daughter of our brother. Do we leave her to die in the bush like an animal?" The square was filled with arguments, voices rising like thunder. Some wept with pity, but many shouted with fear. The debate tore the village apart. Meanwhile, Nneka lay weak in her father's hut. She heard the noise outside but did not understand their words. Her mouth was dry, yet when her mother tried to give her water, she spat it out. Crawling to the door, she whispered, "Grass, give me grass." Her mother collapsed in tears. Even in her sickness, the curse controlled her body. There was no escape. At last, the elders rose with one voice. "If she stays, the whole village may suffer. At dawn, we will send her away." That night, the villagers spread the news from house to house: Nneka would be cast out. Some people nodded in agreement, others wept in secret, but nobody dared to challenge the elders. The proud girl who once mocked everyone was about to be driven away like a stray dog. The morning came with a heavy silence. The sun had not yet risen when the villagers gathered in the square, carrying sticks, lanterns, and palm branches. Their faces were stern, some filled with pity, others with anger. At the front stood the elders, their walking sticks digging into the earth. One of them spoke, "Today we send her away. Let the curse die with her in the wilderness. No one must stop us." The people murmured in agreement. In her father's hut, Nneka lay on the floor, her body weak, her hair tangled, her lips stained green from chewing leaves in the night. Her mother knelt beside her, crying, "My child, they want to send you away. Please, stand and beg them." But Nneka only whispered, "Grass, grass," and tried to crawl toward the doorway. Her father stood in silence, his heart torn, but powerless against the will of the village. Soon the villagers stormed the compound. They shouted, "Bring her out. Bring the grass eater out." Children, hiding behind their parents, sang mockingly, "Goat girl, goat girl." Nneka tried to crawl back inside, but strong hands dragged her out. She screamed weakly, her voice breaking like a torn drum. Her mother clung to her, wailing, "Please, don't take my daughter. She is still my child." But the elders pulled her away, warning, "If you fight us, you too will share her curse." They pushed Nneka through the village paths, her knees bruising on the stones, her cries echoing. People came out of their huts to watch. Some spat on the ground, others turned their faces away. A few wept silently, but nobody dared to stop the crowd. The same girl who once walked proudly, mocking others, was now being dragged like a criminal through the dust. At the edge of the forest, the elders stopped. They pointed into the dark trees and declared, "From today, you no longer belong to this village. Go and live with the animals you love to copy." They pushed her forward and left her there, trembling, crawling, and weeping. As the villagers turned back, her weak cry followed them, "Amarachi. Amarachi, come back to me." But the forest swallowed her voice, and the people did not look back. The forest swallowed Nneka. Alone, weak, and broken, she crawled among the tall grasses, her body trembling with fever. The once proud girl who ruled the village with arrogance was now nothing more than a shadow. Day after day, she searched for green leaves to chew. At night, wild animals howled around her, their eyes glowing in the dark. Sometimes she cried, calling Amarachi's name, but only the wind and the sound of crickets answered her. Loneliness became her closest companion. As the days passed, Nneka grew worse. Her body became thinner, her bones sharper, and her face hollow like a skull. She no longer had the strength to crawl far. She stayed under a tree, tearing at the grass around her until the ground became bare. Birds perched above, watching her with pity. Even the goats and antelopes avoided her, as if they knew she was no longer fully human. Slowly, she was fading away, swallowed by her own curse. Back in the village, whispers filled the air. Farmers who passed near the forest claimed they heard strange cries at night, a sound half human, half beast. Some said they saw Nneka crawling on all fours, her eyes glowing in the moonlight, chewing grass like a wild animal. Fear spread quickly. Parents used her name to warn their children, "If you don't greet your elders, you will end up like Nneka." She had become a living proverb, a tale of warning. One morning, hunters went deep into the forest. There, under a dry tree, they found her body lying still. Her lips were stained green, her hands clutching a handful of grass. Her eyes were open, staring into nothingness. The proud girl who once mocked the old woman had died the death of an animal. The hunters covered her with leaves and returned to the village, shaking their heads. When the news spread, the whole village fell silent. That night, the elders gathered in the square. One of them spoke with a heavy voice, "Let every child in this village learn from Nneka. Pride is a disease. Disrespect brings destruction. The same mouth that refused to greet now chewed grass until death." Mothers held their children close, fathers nodded in agreement. From that day, the story of Nneka, the grass eater, lived forever in the village. And in the whispers of the wind, some swore they could still hear her voice crying, "Amarachi. Amarachi." The end.